Today, I'm interviewing the founder of D5 Gym, James Heagney, who's one of the best kept secrets from social media. He's not very active, but a great deal to offer as a coach and a person. I've worked for D5 for the last 5 years, and I've admired the gym and the attention to detail that was placed on, I guess, putting it all together. So welcome, James, to the podcast today.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me.
So before we get into it, into D5 and training and your nutritional philosophies, can you give us a snapshot of, I guess, who James is and where you're originally from and your training career as a coach?
Yeah, sure. I am originally from the northeast of England, so I'm a proud northerner, and I grew up there for 18 years in the northeast, and then I moved down to Sheffield to study at university, and part of that was sports coaching. Whilst I was actually at university, we did some athletics coaching as well. So I was working with coaching athletics kids, working out of Don Valley Stadium, which is an international stadium, which is really good fun.
Yeah.
I was also started teaching classes then as well, so studio instructing back in there.
Like body pump or?
Not quite body pump, but back then it was RPM, and I'm not the typical studio person, but
No.
I loved it, absolutely loved it. It was a great job during university as well.
Yeah.
And then after that, I moved straight down to London, and fortunately found out that I could be a personal trainer. I didn't really know that career existed.
Yeah. And was this post
university?
University? Okay, yeah.
So post university, and then moved
and
to.
you did exercise sports science or?
Yeah, with sports coaching.
Yeah.
And then so I moved down to London straight after that, and then very quickly realized, okay, actually you can. Personal training's a real job, and I can do that. And it was like, wow. So the journey really started from that perspective. I very quickly you start working with people and realized, okay, I want to be the best personal trainer I can possibly be. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And then I looked around to see who were the top coaches in London at that time, see what they were doing, and then started to follow them. So led me off on a path of education, which formed the basis of D5. And then fast forward about 8 years from that, I was approached to move to Dubai to set up D5 as a center by itself.
Yeah.
And so really for the last 15 years, I've been training business executives, CEOs, and really specializing with high stress executives.
Yeah.
Recently, I was also approached by and appointed by the UAE national powerlifting team for the disabled to work with their UAE athletes. Yeah. I worked for them for 3 years, and that culminated with one of the athletes winning a gold medal at the Rio Olympics as well. Yeah. So that's from the sports performance side of it, but predominantly working with executives.
Yeah. And so just stepping back from, I guess, the training side of things, you've obviously got a work ethic in terms of education. What you said before was, I wanted to be the best. I was looking out, who were the people in London who were, at the top of the game. Where do you think you got that, work ethic to want to become better as a coach? Because not everyone has that. You see a lot of coaches who are in the industry for a while, and they're sort of churning their time and, looking at the numbers and the money more than the actual education side of things. Where do you think you got that?
With that side, I really don't know, because I moved to London, and maybe it was part of the realization of that I can actually, a career existed, which was a real passion of mine, which was training, because I wasn't aware of that whilst I was studying in university. And then,
so when you're at university, what did you think in terms of your degree? What was the career?
I'm not really thinking too much further than that, tell you really. So,
No.
I knew it was going to be in fitness because I was already coaching athletics. I was a qualified athletics coach, and then also I was teaching studio classes. So I guess I moved to London initially, teaching, working out of a gym.
Yeah.
I guess then, showing my age, that was back where it's a little bit more the gym instructor days, and then it was very quickly again, as soon as I realised this was a passion. And you want to earn more money, and London's an expensive place. How do you do that? You got to upskill, and then I just found some people who were really killing it, and wanted to follow them. And then as soon as I started to I remember, I don't know where I got it from, that I said to myself, I'm going to read an article every single day. And that was, I remember the first thing. And that was on
and so was that, did someone give you that advice, or you just sort of...
No, that was a company. So when I was working for, when they had like a continued education across the company, and it was the old PT on the net. That was when these different articles from around the world were starting to crop up. I remember reading a few of those, and just straight away it lit a bit of a fire. And then very quickly came across T Nation, and then just having your mind blown with all of these different articles, from going from not really knowing anything about training. I mean, really during university, you just training and just enjoying things. There's no methods, no methodology as such. And then all of a sudden reading these articles from people around the world who have been successful, and then just applying it, and it just really went crazy from there. Yeah.
And so who were those early people in terms of, I think we'll get in later into some of Charles Poliquin stuff, but who were the guys that you saw? Like you mentioned there's a couple of trainers from London, and obviously reading people on PT on the net. Was there anyone that early on, before Charles Poliquin, that you sort of grasped onto in terms of learning, or no?
It all happened very quickly. So with PT on the net, the main people initially had, like, Paul Check was very big then. There was a guy called Michel Dalcourt, who was a Canadian guy, who was very much more anatomy based. And I remember him seeing a presentation by him where he opened it up by saying, what is movement? So we're looking at it in terms of and had this, someone, if you have to check it out, there's YouTube, David Ellsworth video. And this is a guy from America, who dances, who can move his body in ways which are just, it's insane. And the control it has is completely different to what we believe in terms of bicep curl, these single joint movements. And that really opened the door to anatomy and movement as well. And I think that opened the door, and then just going through a little bit more into strength. Christian Thibodeau was still putting a lot of content out back then. Has some great ebooks from back in the early 2000s, which are still great today.
Yeah, awesome. And then just touching on it, you've mentioned before, but you're obviously a humble sort of guy. You don't big note yourself, but your junior athletic career, and you can still see some of your athletic prowess in the gym when you're hitting the assault bike. But just talk about, I guess, your cricket and your junior tennis.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a frustrated athlete now, I think. I competed in a lot of sports. I think I started, my first bit was tennis, taking that up and getting to a national level at a young age 8, which led to opportunity to play an exhibition tennis match during Wimbledon week when that was on, when I was age 8. So I was...
you still remember that, like competing?
Very much. So that was a more exhibition. That wasn't so much competing, but I was competing at that time. Very much so, remember that, And, I actually moved schools around that time as well to pursue, in part to pursue more tennis. There was times I was playing 3 times per day. So I was really fast-tracking it on that sense at an early age.
Because that just like thinking about back to when I was 8, like I wasn't thinking about, I wasn't training 3 times a day for tennis or anything. And that probably stems back to your work ethic, I think.
I think maybe it does. And
were your parents encouraging you at the same time, or was it something that you were telling your parents you wanted to do?
Oh, both, for sure. No, I wanted to do that, and they absolutely encouraged it. They didn't need to motivate me to do it, but they for sure helped me to do that. So with the tennis, I was actually living away from home, and that I didn't. That was maybe I did that for a couple more years, and I missed home. I missed school too much and all my friends, and I actually moved back home. And I stopped playing tennis competitively, but then drop one baton and then pick up another one, and then that's when I quickly moved into so cricket is a summer sport, and my other sport actually was a winter sport, was hockey actually as well. So and that was that's probably which I represented the highest at that level out of all of those sports. And I think thinking about it, the training maybe comes from when I was transitioning between cricket and hockey, and obviously you're going through a growth spurt. I had a really, at the time, bad back injury at around about 12, 13, which although I haven't not had a scan since, was interesting at the time. They were saying that I had an extra lumbar vertebrae, so I've got an L6 apparently.
Oh, wow.
Knowing what we know now with diagnosis, it's probably faulty, but so I actually had slip disc at that age, at a young age.
Okay.
And so what happened there? It impacted my ability to train and perform, and obviously with hockey, we were going through. I was playing at a high level at a young age, which led to opportunities to be selected for trialing with England, which was a training camp. And I remember playing the tournament to be selected from that. I was actually playing with a slip disc, but managed to get a trial through that. And then having to go to, I think it was like a 3 or 4 day training camp with full fitness testing with a slip disc. And I remember with that, that was a nightmare, so it didn't really help. And I think around that time, that's what really set from a training perspective, because I was always trying to just train out of that, because I was always in pain all the time.
Yeah, so it gave you sort of the motivation.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because I think we're of a similar age, and we grew up with the same action movie stars.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think we've spoken about it before, but just those guys, and I've had a couple of podcasts with another guy called Andrew Reid. He's probably a little bit older than us, but just those people like Arnie, Van Damme, Stallone, they have such a impact on
100%
on training. And part of the reason why I initially got into training was from watching Pumping Iron and those sort of things.
Without doubt. I mean, Stallone, for me, Rocky IV, there's 2 training scenes in that. The second one particularly, I think, if I'm honest, that's the reason I'm a trainer. I'm a trainer today. So because the amount of times I would watch that film with my younger sister, and would pause it and would run the stairs in the house. I'd hang upside down the stairs. She'd sit on my legs and we'd doing the sit-ups. And I guess at that early age, that was all he knew. That was training intensity. That's how Rocky trained. He's running up the mountains. He's doing the weights. That's how you trained. So without doubt, and I think if you watch that the training scene out of that, and it doesn't light a fire in you to want to train,
there's something wrong.
Yeah. Or don't feel bad. Maybe gym training's not for you. But
it's so funny. They're making a movie, for everyone to go watch, and they've basically encouraged personal training indirectly, and people to get into training like us. So we spoke about before, and we've spoken about in our staff meetings, Charles Poliquin, and what he's obviously meant to us as coaches, and you articulated it, sort of what Charles Poliquin meant to you, but also the flow-on effect he's had on the industry, but also us being here in Dubai together. Can you just talk on, I guess, what you said in the meeting, and what Charles Poliquin, I guess, meant to you, and what he's taught you? Yeah,
I mean, I've everything to thank for Charles in terms. He's the person that, when I was going through the continuing education, that I came across his articles on Teenage, and they're the ones which just stood out significant, so much. And actually, the guy who, I can't remember his name, the guy who was one of the top earners in the company I was at before, I was looking at what courses he done, and he'd done these a couple of Poliquin courses. I'd never heard this before. So I was like, okay, right, I need to do that. And that's when I started reading the articles. And then you go to the first course, and just have your mind blown. I mean, in terms of the information that Charles puts across, and really he changed the game significantly. I always knew that I wanted a gym, always, and he provided the vision of what that gym will look like, and what you can do and what you can't do. So this, high service, high end facility, like a performance facility, for example, but also based around executives. He provided the clarity for that. Which so did you actually have consultations with him before you? No, I didn't. I didn't do any of that. It blew my mind, things like that. We'd go on these courses. I spent 3 years probably doing every single course that the Poliquin group did. And there was so much information, and you should go into class, listen, observe, take notes. There was so much information. You don't need to do these. People were doing these crazy consults with him to ask him.
It's like £1,000.
£1,000 at a time. Come on, but then also it's good that people were willing to do that. It was a really, really special time. There was some of the coaches we met on those initial courses. Well, actually, that's how we're all together here. I think in D5 at the moment, we've all met. through Poliquin-based courses, through people we've met on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just to give the listeners some idea, like the people that are working in the gym, you've met all through. So I think Danielle did you meet her on a Poliquin course or no?
Well, yeah. So actually, with Heather, actually she's been a podcaster with Heather.
She two episodes. I think she was on episode 23, and she was like awesome guest.
So Heather's great, and we always used to see Heather on the training courses all the time, and I think it was actually Heather then put me in touch with Danielle. Danielle was looking to move over to Dubai, and she's like, "Okay, this guy should meet up with James." And then I actually didn't realize until I'm looking through Danielle's CV and realized we've been on a similar course on the Pimps course back in London. So then the network like that,
Yeah, but it all stems back to Charles Poliquin, and I've heard on other podcasts people talk about him, and it's a part of the reason why he was so good was his charisma, and he sort of had that like story time at the end, and you'd go, and I was sort of like, I remember the first Poliquin course I did was Biosig, and just the story time at the end, like I was like, this is worth the price of admission just to come
100%. Yeah, the parking lot sessions. Yeah, I think that's the sad thing now that where back then, if we wanted to go and learn, we had to go and book on for a course, book flight tickets, fly to the other side of the world, and go and listen in person. And the benefit of that is the like-minded coaches that you sit and meet with and you spend a week with, and that's helped us for D5 where we're at the moment. But it's not the content, it's really what you come after the course. I'm now for a significant amount of time now. For me, the value of doing a lot of courses is actually the in-person one. It's the outside of that
networking.
Networking in the trenches. Talk about what we actually do, and we've all been through this now, and that's the real valuable stuff.
Yeah. And then just coming back, just full circle to Poliquin. What are the lessons you've spoke about in the meeting before? What are the key sort of fundamental principles? Not necessarily, I mean, you can say training and nutrition, but also the principles around your education that he taught you that you still use now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think two of the best ones were, I think his recommendation was 8 hours, but I always took it at 10. So it was more have 8 to 10 hours of concentrated study time per week and protect that time. And so I always did that and had that as a minimum as well. So I would always be doing concentrated study for 10 hours per week minimum. That was a huge thing. And another one was 10% of your income back into continued education. That was huge as well. And then
I guess the training side of things, are there principles you still use that in terms of your programming and your own training yourself?
Yeah, so from a program perspective, I think nobody gets close to Charles's training systems, and from a strength coach, and phenomenal different programs, great for clients, even with the undulating periodization, intensification, accumulation, especially with executive clients who you don't need to periodize per se because they travel so much and they do want variant, they want change in stimulus and all of these different training methods to go through, whether it's a 6, 12, 25, German body comp. There's so many different variations, which are great. From a nutrition perspective, I didn't really agree with from the nutrition. Charles is very dogmatic with his low carb approach, but from a training perspective, and a little bit, supplementation was a little bit aggressive, shall we say? With
the fish
we've
oils.
all been down that. Yeah, we've all been down that route a little bit. But yeah, essentially, training program. I still use them today with myself, with the clients, along with other methods as well. But yeah, they're the big backbone of that.
Yeah. So just moving into your philosophy and your style of coaching. We'll speak about D5 in a bit, but just in terms of when you get someone walking through the door, what are the areas you're looking at, especially in D5? I think is particular with the types of clientele that we get here. They're all very similar. It's all your A-type personalities. They're all CEOs, CFOs. They're working in business. They're high performers, and they're coming in to see you. What are the key areas, I guess, you're focusing on with those guys?
The first one is to manage their expectations. So really dig in to find out what do they exactly want to achieve. That's really important. because what they're telling you sometimes is always possible, but it has to be possible with what they're willing to do, and we've got to find out what you're willing not to do. So from the start, making very, very clear like that, so you have full buy-in as well. So establish very clear goals, and then it depends on from a health perspective. We're looking at nutrition's like one of the big things. So we do like full nutrition recall to find out what they're eating at the moment. We have a very comprehensive questionnaire that we give all clients before we meet them first of all. So we can find out about their sleep, their digestion, what they have been doing, injuries. We try and get as much information as possible before doing anything.
Yeah. So you're painting that picture of this is what the person is before you've actually
massively. Yes, we're finding out what exactly what's the pain problem for them. Like what's the thing that's motivated them to come in. What's the landscape, for example? So what we're at the moment, what's your sleep like? Can you not sleep? Digestion, what are your time constraints like? Everything like that. That provides the framework for what we're able to do. Because we like to do things in an ideal sense. You're going to train like this, you're going to eat like this, but we know that's not going to happen. So very much have a look at the landscape of how it is at the moment, and then look for the areas that you can apply influence to make the biggest difference.
Yeah, cool. So I think it's probably a good time to start talking about D5 and the 5 dimensions of health. And can you just explain the concept behind D5 and what it stands for?
Yeah, so D5 stands for the 5 dimensions of health. The 5 dimensions are exercise, nutrition, supplementation, restoration, and education. So how that came about was initially when I was approached about moving to Dubai to open a facility, and I got chatting to a guy, and it's like, okay, well, telling him what do you do and how do you approach it, and that's what really made me think, okay, it's problem solving with every client. So what am I doing when a client presents a problem? I would like to achieve X in this amount of time. So with problem solving, instead of just looking at exercise, then, because even if you exercise, let's say 3 times per week, and 3 times per week is a significant commitment for someone who's not exercising, but it's only 3 hours out of 168 in a week. So you need to look for other areas of that 168 that you can make influence. So we go to nutrition. If you're eating 4, 5, 6 times a day, so if it's evening, breakfast, lunch and dinner with snacks, you have meetings with biscuits in, you've got 35 to 40 feeding opportunities per week to move closer or further away from your goal as well. So it's very important to factor in from a nutrition perspective, and then obviously from a supplementation point of view, we like to look at labs for clients as well. And that's just more to take the guesswork out of it. So obviously you're presenting with certain issues. A lot of that is digestion, sleep.
And so just to pull you up on that, what specifically, if you had your perfect client walk in, they're compliant, they're saying, James, I'm going to do all the blood work, all the labs. What does that look like in terms of if you're sending people away to get a clear indication?
So it depends on the goal, 100% their goal,
Okay.
because the goal will dictate what you're testing for. So because testing can be very expensive, and obviously the more test to a degree, but really it's what's the client, what do they want to achieve? So we try and simplify things as much as possible. A lot of clients that we see walking through the door have comprehensive health insurances, so they already have had blood panels done in the last 3 to 6 months. So we actually use that as a framework to see, okay, that we're looking for when you're looking at labs, we're looking for like the big elephants there, the things that really stand out, not the small things.
Okay.
But if it's an executive client, they're concerned about cardiac health, then you look at things like C-reactive protein, which is for more of an inflammatory marker for the heart. Homocysteine will show inflammation across the whole body. The liver panel, so AST, ALT, these are things that very quickly you can go back to a client and say, okay, your liver enzymes are elevated. Is that alcohol, poor diet?
And in that case, so just bring it back to supplementation, then say if their liver enzymes are affected or they're not where they should be, and then you've got your C-reactive proteins high, so they've got lots of inflammation. What's the protocol? Because I think the where D5 separates itself from a lot of other facilities is the detail and the precision that you go into and you select. It's not necessarily from you're not looking at from a commercial aspect to make a lot of money out of the supplements. It's more you're just trying to source the best quality stuff that's going to fix their problem in the shortest amount of time. So could you just talk about that, I guess?
Yeah. So, well, if something presents on the test, always nutrition first, always. So there's been times previously when I would more aggressively supplement, but I think too much of an emphasis gets put on supplementation from a client perspective. They like to throw money at a solution, whereas actually let's pull things back a little bit, focus on nutrition first and supplementation to support that. I mean, in terms of from a supplement perspective, it's a real interest of mine. So we're always trying to source the best possible product. So, and that's also just through, so I can look a client in the eye and tell them this is the best. This is the supplement that I would take myself. This is what I would give to my mum.
And I think you do as well. So
yeah, 100. So it's really important for that. And then we try to offer also with the best products for what we believe they are for the person. So it's going to be electrolytes. We use like Mark Schauss's electrolytes. If we use ATP Australia, they're a very forward-thinking, innovative new company. We have some very exciting products, and then we have like the staples with things like the Thorn range and the Polycid range, which is more pharmaceutical grade. Very high quality. You know exactly what you're getting, so you can actually give that to a client with full confidence.
Yeah, and if you were to have like a bit of a shotgun approach, someone comes in there like that stressed out executive that we spoke about before, and they cleaned up their diet or were as compliant as they possibly could with the diet. What are the, not silver bullets, but more of a shotgun approach? What would you recommend for that clientele type?
So for a stressed out executive, my favorite go-to, which I tend to all the time, is adaptogenic herbs. So Chinese, Indian herbs, so adaptogens, whether it's going to be ashwagandha, rhodiola, these things which help from a stress response. So I loosely refer to them now as like an executive's modern day multivitamin, if you like. So we generally know the general benefits of taking a multivitamin, but actually having something which is more focused all around adrenal health, because executives are just flogging their adrenals constantly. So the more you can support that, the better. And adaptogens are great in the sense that they help to lift you up if you're a little bit depleted, but also bring cortisol down, which actually going back to the tests, which is my favorite test to use with clients is the Dutch test, which is the urine test that we can, as a non-invasive test we can give to clients in the gym. They can take away, can perform it in one day, send off, and we get a very comprehensive feedback on their adrenal-based hormones. So from a cortisone, we're looking at testosterone, estrogen, melatonin, and these are the types of tests which are really important for our target demographic. So looking at cortisol panels for sure, that's what's important. So looking from cardiac markers, so whether it's going to be the homocysteine for inflammation, looking at triglycerides for blood fats, looking at liver enzymes, they're the things that I can talk to them in real terms, because that's their concerns. Am I going to have a heart attack? Yes or no, this type of thing. That's the buy-in. I want to be able to perform more at work. I feel tired when I wake up in the morning. I can't sleep at night. So I can guess certain things, but the best way is to test. And when you test, that's when you can be a lot more aggressive with supplementation, because then you actually have the answers. So that's the two ways. If you don't have the information, you generally support. If you have the clear information, then you can really push.
And I guess it's just a real measured approach. You're doing everything. It's like, and I guess for me as well, and I find this with working with clients, compliance and building up that element of trust, which you spoke about before, is critical in getting people to take supplements. What are ways that you personally, as a coach, and when you mentor the other coaches in the gym, what do you do to get that buy-in from the clients? Because I've seen a lot of guys, especially the guys in DIFC, and they're very much black and white in terms of like they don't believe in this, or and you've spoken about before about how you can, if you fix someone's sleep, then you can gain a lot of trust and buy-in for them to take X supplement or to try this. Can you just elaborate on that?
I think that's something I've done for a long time now. I think I'm sure that's probably a tip that I got from Charles back in the day, and that was. We were dealing with executives all the time. So executive presents with you and it's like, how's your sleep? We know it's going to be terrible because their brains are just overactive all the time. And if you don't sleep well for even 2 nights, 3 nights, you feel terrible. So straight away, sometimes instead of just saying I can help you, show someone you can help them. So if I can get somebody to sleep, improve the quality of sleep, who haven't had a good sleep for years potentially, in the first 3 to 5 days, which is really it's not that hard to do. And as soon as they start to sleep, everything improves, mood improves, energy improves, and then they start to trust you straight away. And that helps, because the majority of your clientele are presenting with that issue, so you get to practice a lot with that as well. So it wouldn't work for everybody if someone's sleeping well, but you fix someone's sleep, they're open, they trust you.
And so what would be your port of call for the typical client who comes in, they're tired, wired, they can't sleep at night, they're overactive mind? Where do you go to? What are your approaches for that?
There are lots of different ways, and you should always periodize your nutrition, so your supplementation as well, to match your lifestyle at certain times, depending on what's happening in life, and there's certain times you ramp things up. But the backbone are always things like the magnesium threonate, which is a magnesium which is going to be a little bit more preferred by the spinal cord to influence the brain. Also, inositol as well helps to calm the neurotransmitters in the brain. Some herbs, like lavender, things like that, okay, but I think the other one I would go for is adaptogens, basically, so to lower stress at night. And that combination really seems to work really well. And there are other lifestyle factors, but that's from a supplementation perspective.
And so we've spoken about nutrition. We haven't touched, so just touching on each of the dimensions of D5. What's next?
So we go exercise, nutrition, and then supplementation, restoration.
So restoration, what does that mean, and what does that look like?
So restoration started initially from me working, so before even D5 became a concept, if you like. So I was just training clients. Then you're training clients, and very quickly you realize, okay, I can only help that client so much if my toolbox is just training. So then we learned, okay, how do I help my client more? So I need to go and learn more about nutrition, which went down into being a qualified sports nutritionist, but learning more about nutrition. So that's the second dimension, because then I can have a bigger toolbox to be able to help them out. From a supplementation, initially it started from biosignature, which then went down to functional medicine, and learning the concepts of that. And
what specifically courses did you do for after you did your biosig and you got into functional medicine? Which ones did you go to, and which ones would you recommend for other coaches?
Well, I did functional medicine university, FMU. I would recommend that. But and then I did pretty much even to this day, I would always be learning something related to that. So some form of aspect of the functional medicine. It would be everyone and ever. I mean, in terms of, so I would take, that's again going back to Charles. A lot of the people he introduced he would bring in people who from different, whether it's going to be from liver, from this, and then you start following that person, and then who do they follow? All of this tails
just
off. Opens up. Just reading up, following more people. Going back to the Dutch test now, so actually starting to look a little bit more from. Focusing more from an adrenal perspective, from the androgen perspective as well. But with the functional medicine stuff, it's fascinating. It's a real passion of mine. But the more you go into it, the more you realize you know nothing. And you have to kind of pull back from that, because we were assisting clients and helping clients, but. It's an area the industry is gonna, people go down a little bit too much. And it's great to follow that, but you've got to remember we're still trainers, and
it's a slippery slope when you start bringing home like full textbooks, medical textbooks, and you're reading those on the weekend. You're like, hang on, this is this is a bit full on. And so
we're on to restoration. So the restoration side of it initially became, for me, again, I'm training clients. How do I over-deliver with my clients as well? So if I'm training you and then you tweak your shoulder, I want to be able to fix that there and then, because if you can't train, we can't progress, make goals. I can't earn money. It's it goes hand in hand. And again, just going on to some of the Charles's courses, and Charles is a very big proponent of ART, so then I would go and I did my ART upper and lower, and that was never to be a therapist. I never wanted to do that. I think I learned quite quickly I don't like getting hands-on with people and like touching people and things like that.
Yeah.
But what I did want I wanted to learn the fixes for the shoulders and the hips and the knee, the quick things which would allow my clients to get better results and things like that. So I went down that avenue and did various things like MAT and applied kinesiology, these things, really interesting things which have really helped clients at certain stages. And that's when, to add that into from a D5 perspective, that's why now we have a phenomenal team from our therapy side of the business, the sports therapy aspect, which is the restoration, trying to get people out of pain, improve function so they can train better, they feel better. And that's not something I do personally now because it's not my passion. But we have a great team there. So it's a really important part of the training.
And that's something I can I really enjoy, because there's often a big disconnect in places I've worked before with strength and conditioning coaches or personal trainers between the rehab model. And so you get the rehab model, the physiotherapists or the sports therapists, and they're in a different clinic, and you've got a personal trainer in the gym, and you refer out, and then there's a disconnect in terms of the communication between the two. And often, the sports therapist will be saying one thing and then the personal trainer will be saying something else. But having everything in-house, you've got a sports therapist. And for me, I'm like you, I'm not a hands-on person with my clients. I don't like to do manual therapies on them. And I haven't, because of that. And so I really enjoy the fact that, okay, this guy's got an issue that I can't do, and then I'll just go speak to Ollie, I'll speak to Danielle, and then you'll speak to them, they'll sort it out, and then they'll come back and give you feedback and say, stay away from X, stay away from overhead shoulder press, or whatever it is. And I think that's a very powerful thing for a facility to have in-house people where you can communicate and have that open level of communication.
I'm going to agree. Yeah, that's like one of the big parts of. That was a huge part of D5, and we've been very fortunate to be able to do that and to be able to offer it to the level that we do as well.
And now we're licensed with the Dubai Health Authority, so people that come into the gym, they can claim now on their
they
insurance.
can use their health insurance as well, which is great for us as well. That's always a bit of a hurdle, a bit of an obstacle. Everyone has, with the private healthcare model here, they generally have multiple physiotherapy, like sports therapy sessions they can do, and now they can use them at D5. So we just have to get out there, and people know that we are actually not just a gym, but we're actually an exercise rehabilitation clinic as well. Yeah.
And then as we covered everything on the restoration front, so is there anything we've missed?
With restoration, obviously we also factor in FST as well, so fascial stretch therapy. And not only, I think that's a absolutely brilliant modality for therapy. I think everybody should be doing that. And not only do we exclusively offer that in the UAE, we have Danielle and Andre, who are both level 2 and soon to be level 3, which is offering that at a really high level. And really, I think FST, every person should have FST as part of their program. So, which is fascial stretching. It's assisted stretching. It stretches the fascia instead of independent muscles, and the results are excellent.
Yeah, well, I can second that. I've pretty much all my clients, I try and get into FST, and I think the ones that have already done it, you can see when they come back and they're training, particularly one of my clients, a bigger guy, just making a huge difference in his positions at the bottom of a squat, getting into his deadlift, like thoracic spine mobility, and around his hips. He's just always been a big sort of tight guy, and just with 2 or 3 sessions with Andre, it's like opened up new positions for him. So
he feels better, and then you can do your job better as well, and everyone's happy. And
then performances increase, and weight loss, whatever the client's target is or their goal. And restoration is that
I guess we also have an infrared sauna at D5 as well, so that's part of the recovery process, and it's actually something we're focusing on a little bit more now in terms of getting clients to take more accountability outside of the gym. So when we were talking about measuring, even basic things like resting heart rate and blood pressure and these step targets, and adding in that, and is actively encouraging restoration as part of the program as well. You know, there's a lot of time I'll be talking to a client and I'll talk them down from training sessions, gym sessions as such, to get more of a balance as part of the restoration. So like even just building an aerobic base, for example, is important.
And then from an education point of view, with the 5 dimensions, what does that mean for you at D5 in terms of the customer experience?
Yeah, so that was very much in terms of, I think in the idea for me was always to teach clients as much as possible. So I think in the fitness industry there is a lot of grey area, and a lot of bold claims are made in various things, and my aim was always to be, don't take my word for it, ask as many questions as possible. But the more, if I'm teaching you about something, so for breakfast, if I'm teaching you about breakfast, instead of telling you what to eat, if I teach you why we're eating that, I'm going to get more of a buy-in from clients. Because we've found that it's not that people are lazy, people put a lot of effort into training nutrition, but sometimes it's just misguided and it's channeled down the wrong areas. And again, when you're working with high-level executives, they're smart, driven individuals, and they want the latest information. They want to know that the person that they're spending time with is giving them the best information, and that also, you know, they're smart. So when you inform them and you give them more information, they can make the choices, the decisions themselves, because it's an informed decision, and they respect that, and then they buy into the principle of it. They buy into the program more, and it's a huge part. And really, in one sense, if someone's training with you for 12 weeks, it would be my aim to them to not need me in 12 weeks. That would be the job done.
Yeah.
I mean, and you've seen actually one of my first clients in Dubai, Colin, for example. So, I mean, Colin was a CFO. He could work as a trainer. I mean, the guy was in his 50s. Because we would discuss training. He would go back. He would read. He would come back, and he knows a lot.
But it was funny when I started training Colin. It was like, I don't know what year you trained him. Maybe it was 2012 or something like that. It was like a time capsule, because he'd remembered specifically what you'd said, and I was like, you know, at 2012, James is obviously big into Polican at that stage, so he had all the, you know, the fish oils and the branched chain amino acids. Yeah. He's probably the ideal candidate in terms of the education. And it comes back to that buy-in. If you've got someone and you're teaching them, you don't want them to come in, you don't want to be spoon feeding them the whole time in terms of the training. If you've got someone who's there and they're learning and they're getting educated, then, you know, when they travel, obviously a lot of guys in Dubai, they travel a lot. And if you can get someone, okay, they know how to do this, X, Y, Z. Anything else on? Oh, actually, just talking about still talking about D5, and now more on the kit that's in there. You've obviously put a lot of, you know, thought and effort into what you've got in that space, and it's quite funny because you see a lot of people who stay in the Capital Club, and they walk into the gym and they kind of look at. I can just see the look on their face, and they're like, they don't know what the hell is, you know, we have like a skill mill essentially, or like a treadmill that you propel yourself. And to the outsider, it might not seem like, you know, a state-of-the-art facility, but for someone who's been in the industry for a while, you look at it and you're like, the kit's awesome. Yeah.
Well, that's because it was designed by people who train, you know, that's the passion. It was more, so everything was selected for its actual use, and you know, even like one side of the gym is all lower body exercises, you know, so and that only really comes from someone who loves their training and takes it seriously, and you know, it's a results based facility, so therefore every piece of kit has to be worthwhile and work, and that unfortunately means that sometimes it's hard work. So even with the True Form Runner, for example, it's a horrible piece of kit, but and that's why people don't like it. They don't like it because it's hard, but the carry over to actual running and from a conditioning is profound, and that's why we're here. So it's efficiency. People are coming to the gym, they don't have time. They need to make sure that their nutrition, their supplementation, their exercise is exactly what they need, and with the equipment that's what we tried to do, maximize everything. So it's I see people come in, wear the treadmills, and it's like, I mean, we have conditioning kit, but it's that's the way it should be. We want people who train. That's it.
Yeah, and it's almost, it instills, you need a coach, or you need a skilled professional a lot of the times to, if you're a rookie beginner.
Well, that's by design as well. I mean, it's a personal training based facility for coaches, and we want people to come who want to train and want to work hard and work alongside with the coach as well. So yeah.
Now I've got to ask you about the assault bike. It's a bit of equipment. If the listeners haven't used an assault bike, it's as the names suggest, it's an assault on you. If you spend 30 seconds on an assault bike and go all out, you can pretty much fall off the bike. And you seem to have a bit of a infatuation, I think, with the bike. I always turn around and I hear the whir of the bike going, and James is on there. And your capacity, I remember, I think when Max was still working here, you tried to do 1,000 calories, or you didn't try. You did 1,000 calories, and you showed us the graph of your heart rate over that 1,000. And I was looking at the graph, and it's like 85% of your max. You were at close to 85% of your max for, I don't know, however long it was.
Yeah, actually, I've seen that graph again because it haunts me. And I was actually, it was 90% of heart rate. So I was in a red zone, which is 90% of heart rate for people who not sure that when you're 90% of heart rate, the body's just screaming to stop. That's when, there's a lot of pain and it's up. And I was in the red for 47 minutes out of about an hour and 10. It was horrific, yeah. But the problem that was what actually happened with that test, and I remember doing 1,000 calories twice on it, and I will never do it again, I'm pretty sure, unless someone challenges me. But then, and what actually happened is we had a 50-calorie challenge in the gym, so very, very short, all-out sprint. See how quickly you can do that. And then we had a guy who came in and said, "Come on, we've got a 50-calorie challenge. You got to sign up." And he's like, "Oh no, I'm an endurance person. It's not my thing." And then before I could realise what I said, "Well, come on, then put your money where your mouth is. What's endurance? 1,000 calories." And I said it. And then once you say it, you got to do it. And he was like, "Okay." So he did it. I did it, and then I did it. I didn't really know what to expect, 1,000 calories on the bike, so I went off moderately.
But did you roughly know how long it was going to take you, or no?
No, just well over an hour, I thought that. But then, so did the first time, and I was like, okay, great. That wasn't as bad as I thought. Let's do it one more time at a later date. Let's do it one more time and put a marker down and be done with it. And that's when I did that, and it was, I was sick for 2 days afterwards. I think my immune system just went on holiday for that. I remember... it was tough. But
where do you think you get that competitive edge to want to? Because I mean, it's every ounce of your body is telling you to stop in that sort of situation. And for me, like I stay away from that bike as much as I could possibly get away from it. I don't enjoy it. But how do you, just from a mindset perspective, take yourself to that place?
Well, that's where the magic happens. Like when you it's very cathartic when you get to a point where in that 90% plus range where there's so much lactic acid, you just, it's like a form of madness meditation. I mean, it's quite addictive in one sense. You get to this point where it's just, it's always been like that. I think when I think back to, you say when we were training, I mean, that's what Rocky did. That's like a training intensity there. So I'm just doing what he's doing in that training scene on a bike. I think back to when I lived in the countryside, so I was racing mountain bikes at like 10, and I wasn't that great at it. So we would train with adults, and you would just get dropped on these hills constantly. So you were constantly suffering in these things. So then it became normal on a bike, and it's just something to test yourself like that. I think you really find it's a bit of a dark place. And I like that. It's, and so I like to test myself like that. And these, I don't excel at these endurance events. I'm more built for like speed, but I enjoy them because they really challenge you and really put you out of your comfort zone. And there's something really puts a grin on my face. Like even going up to Al Qudra and then going around and just trying to stay in the red zone and you're just locked in, and it's always been there. And
you do have that
like
side of your personality or your approach to things. It's like, okay, the maximum dose I can take is 5 grams. I'll take 4.5. It's like you
of course. So
like if you're
I like extremes for sure. I like extremes, and if it says take 1 scoop, you always take 2. I mean, it's like the same as you don't read the instructions when you buy something. And then work backwards from there. So
I'm not sure you'd recommend that to your clients.
Of course, never with clients, but it's different. I like to personally experiment. That's the thing. Always, whether it's I can give an exercise to a client, and we feel no remorse in terms of for what if it's a tough exercise, because I know I will do that, and I know I have done that. Again, you never do a workout that you haven't done yourself,
it comes back to compliance as well, because if you can authentically say, I've done 1,000 calories, you should do it, then you've already you're the level of authority on that. You've experienced
by
it.
example as well. That's it, and for sure you've got to do that.
So touching on your training, what specifically you've been in the industry for 15 plus years, and you've been through a myriad of programs and cycles of different things. What do you actually personally enjoy now, and what are you more focused on with your own training, I guess?
So at the moment, so I like to do all types of training. So I will normally plan a block of training for 4 to 6 weeks, and whether that's I'll write a phase of training for myself, and then I'll normally go on to a phase of training written by somebody else, whether it's a different coach from around the world, a different training program that I'm following. Because I'm always experimenting. Again, I always want to experiment, want to see different variations of exercise. I never have, not never, I love all types of training. So if I go down into one form of training, so for example, earlier in the year, it's okay, right, so I want to do a double body weight squat. So you start to put all of your eggs in that basket there, and then getting towards that goal, achieving that goal, and then it's more, well, actually, now I feel like a bit like I'm tight, and all I do is squat. So then, okay, you're done with that, and then I'll go into more an aerobic based goal. So it might be like 50 calories working on that. And then if I haven't ran for a while, it's like I haven't ran for a while, I go for a run, it hurts, then you pull back and do that. So I try to... my default training would be, even just classic bodybuilding. I love that. It's, but I'm not too keen on the effects of that. So in terms of very easily to put on muscle mass, and I like to keep more athletic. I like to be able to feel like if you were to turn around tomorrow and say, okay, let's go. Not that I do 5K runs, but it's like, let's go and do 5K run. Great. Let's see, if you want to do, 50, 60K on Al Qudra, then great. I need like to feel that all the time. So I would go from month to month and just try different types of training.
And what would you suggest for someone who's looking for longevity and health for their main goals? What would be the perfect training plan that you'd come up with for that person? Now, we've spoken about all different styles, but what would that look like? Because I think typically a lot of the guys who come to D5 in their 40s and 50s are looking for a long-term approach in terms of what they're going to feel like when they're 60, when they're 70. So what would that look like for you if you were designing that for someone for just overall health and long-term health, so not for body composition necessarily or for hypertrophy?
Yeah, so I think now I'm definitely less regimented with my systems with executive clients. So the first one will be, it's the workout that they can stick to. So whatever they're going to enjoy and they're going to stick to, that's the most important thing, because you can write the best plan, the best nutrition plan. If they're not going to follow it, it doesn't work anything. So build an aerobic base to start off with, for sure. Improving cardiovascular function. I think that's overlooked a lot in personal training from just doing weights, things like that. We've got to look at our demographic. So definitely build an aerobic base. Then center in at least two full body weight training sessions per week. There would be my two things that would go in. And if I can take that and then build from there, that's the most important thing. because for long term. But ideally, if we could center it around moving to like 3 training sessions per week, and then in that session trying to hit as many things as possible, whether it's mobility is going to be huge as well. So always keeping full range of motion across all the joints, building a base of strength and aerobic, anaerobic capacity. So for longevity, if someone's coming to me 3 days out of 7, I would try and that's how I would approach it.
Yeah. And so touching on, I've asked many of my guests before, but things that you would have learnt from in terms of mistakes that you've made, whether it's a specific example of a client, but of things that you used to do, say 5 or 10 years ago, that now you think, why the hell was I doing that? And
I'm laughing, it's just coming to my mind. What I did about 15 years ago was, I remember, again, probably when I'm just reading all these articles, and I came across this calf workout, and I remember this guy in the gym, and he wasn't a client or anything like that. He just said, I want to train calves. And I was like, well, I'll give you this workout. And I remember it was this ascending 75 rep set or something where you do something like 15 reps, rest 10 seconds, 20, 25, and it comes back in like a pyramid up and down, 75 reps. So I was like, hey, try this. I hadn't done it before as well. I said, great. That's probably why I realized it. Always do a workout
first rule
beforehand.
of personal training.
Yeah. Oh man, I gave this guy, and he was like literally walking like like Gollum coming back into the gym, and just and then it's like so in terms of training, I would say definitely too regimented. So from as in, this is the workout, this is what we got to do, this is a perfectly periodized plan, we're doing this to move on to the next. Keep those concepts, but it doesn't really have a real world application to clients when they travel. They're deloading in certain forms like that. Pushing back on volume, I would say also as well. Training how we would train in our 20s in like a young personal training demographic is very different when people are stressed as well in like the 40s and 50s as well. So knowing when to cut back on volume. But mistakes, I mean, I'm always learning, so all the time, hopefully not too big, but just I've never really attached myself fully to a certain training methodology. So even when we're going through the old PICP stuff, there was still a lot of questions there in terms of, because it was different from certain aspects. It's like, well, I used to do this before and it worked with this. I've always had this, that wasn't the first thing learning going into the industry. So I always had this aerobic background as well. So there was always things I would always need that as well. So I felt that I've kept quite well rounded in that sense. I haven't really just gone down one form and allowed to just rigidly stick to that. Yeah.
Well, I think that's good advice. I think good advice for coaches as well. What do you think are common areas that you've seen just working in D5, but also that you see, maybe it's on social media, that you think people put way too much effort and emphasis on, and you think you're probably better spending time doing something else? Is there sort of common areas that you think people waste their time with?
Yeah, potentially. Like in terms of when you go through, it's the minutiae, we're really getting into the small stuff. So you can go down these black holes of, in the vested interest of clients, like trying to help them out, whether it's going to be looking at gut health, looking at gene defects, all these different types of things. And they're just essentially, I think they're rabbit holes you can go down, and it's not as important. If you got to always come back to the clients, this is the thing we always say with guys, is like the client's goal is the client's goal. You have to keep their goal. That's the most important thing that they're coming in. It's not your goal. It's not your thought process. It's not what you're doing at the moment. It's like, what's the client's goal? And majority of the time, that's lifestyle habits, move more, training, nutrition. Probably put people in a deficit, like look at the calories and then train them, and a lot of things take care of themselves in that sense. And sometimes, you're not losing weight because you have a phyolate in you and things like that. I've been down that route and explored it all with different testing, and I think you can just waste a lot of time on that when actually you need to just
step back and look at the overarch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so with D5 now, you obviously help a lot of the younger trainers that are less experienced. How do you find that in terms of mentoring? Because you're now stepped out you've been a coach for so many years, and now you're effectively running a business and you're mentoring and trying to groom the guys to get to that sort of the level that you're at and an experienced coach is at. How do you find that, just that transition from the two?
Oh, it's very tough. It's completely different as well. So, I mean, the huge transition of just transitioning from being a personal trainer to then actually running a business as well. That's something that they don't prepare you for sure. So that's been different. And then from the mentorship perspective, it's still relatively new with the guys where I've really got stuck into, and we have where we're really getting into it. And I guess what's challenging there on a one-to-one basis, similar with clients, it's much easier because you're doing it directly onto that person. But in a more of a group setting with our junior coaches is challenging because you have different personalities in that, and different people learn different ways. So that is a challenge. It's something. It's a nice challenge. Yeah, it's something new for me. So it's
and what do you focus on with those guys? What are the areas when you get someone new, a coach? What you obviously it's about the 5 dimensions, but what? Just give us an example of what.
Well, so I would always just try and work back from what I wish someone had done with me in my at the start. If someone put their arm around me in the start of my career and took me through things, so even at the very start is just from what a trainer looks, how they should conduct themselves, which is really important. Appearance, everything like that. How they interact with their clients, how they speak to their clients, how they communication. And then we move on to working with the client as well. So, for example, looking at trying to interpret these internal. So, when a client presents to you, they have all of these clues which are telling you, which can give you more information to get more results. So we help them to interpret that. So, what are some of the external clues, like what's happening with, hair growth, circulation, there's all these different signs on the body which can say. So we try to teach. Well, we teach them to look at that. Then internally, so looking at biofeedback, heart rate, blood pressure. So just going step by step, how to go through a full consultation form to really find out what's the client actually telling you. Because what they're telling you sometimes is very different to we're trying to find that hot spot all the time. What's that real deep internal motivator for them coming in? What can I work on to make sure I'm doing my job properly? That's the main thing. That person's coming in. You have this amazing opportunity to work very closely with someone. You need to do everything possible to find out that's exactly what you're doing, and that's even before you get into program design. Then because essentially first things first is training. That's what you forget. So going through all different types of training systems, how to periodize that, how to actually do the workouts as well, which is really important. Not enough people train nowadays. I don't think. I think you have to. There's a certain.
You can't be an armchair expert on.
No, and there's a lot of that now. So that's a huge part of it, and then we go through nutrition and. Yeah, I mean, we write personalized nutrition plans for all the clients at D5, so we go through that. But at the start of the mentorship, nutrition is not as important because that's it, always focusing on what's the most important thing, finding exactly what the client wants and training them.
Yeah, and I wish someone had have told me that in the beginning, and just from the communication point, because similar to you sort of focus on a lot about the methods that you're doing, and you don't sort of step back and think, hang on, this is like a person. You've got to treat them as a person, and they might not tell you or have enough trust initially when you see that person to say what they really want.
Yeah.
And I think it's only over time that you start to understand that the more you communicate with that person, you'll uncover really what they are coming into the gym for. And I think the mentorship and what you spoke about then is the power of them getting that experience and exposure on a day-to-day basis with someone like yourself that's made mistakes, and you learn from that sort of stuff. So I'm just trying to think what we're on to now. So just D5. So coming back to D5, just to round it out, what's the plans? What's the future for D5, and what's upcoming?
So from here is to keep growing the business and attract world-class coaches. So we have a great environment to learn from a day-to-day basis, which is huge. So keep building that side of the business, and the main focus now is the sports therapy side of it. So through Danielle and Oliver to really get out there, because I truly believe what they're actually offering is very different from a sports therapy perspective. The results that we're getting are phenomenal, and the reason for that is that they're world-class coaches. They're not just therapists as well, so they've been in the trenches, they're training people, but they're also upskilling in various different modalities. And Ollie bringing in his neuro take on training and pain management has been a real revelation, and will be, without doubt, that's the biggest thing that's coming from a sports therapy perspective in the future. That is so some of the results we're seeing are quite unbelievable, but the reason for that is because it's something new. We can only judge and think of what we understand, and this is so it's really exciting in that sense. So from our perspective, we're, especially with the licensing, we're pushing the sports therapy here, because already the people are coming through. We're making huge differences to them, so it's really awesome to be able to do that. Yeah,
and Ollie's obviously, she's been on the podcast as well, and he's got an interesting take on things and a unique approach to getting someone out of pain. And he's worked with several of my clients before and got great results. And it's, a testament to you that you can get talent like that here to get results here. So next part of the interview is just the rapid fire questions. You can take as long as you want. They're just more just trying to find out a little bit more about you personally. What's your all-time favorite training, self-help, or any book that's had a significant impact? You can pick 3 books or one book or whatever.
One of the most enjoyable books that I've ever read was Muscle, Smoke and Mirrors, and it's the part 1. And that is by a guy called Randy Roach. And the way that the way that this started is obviously sports nutrition is a huge part, like a passion of mine. So, and this guy started off writing a nutrition-based article, and it just escalated into this basically an encyclopedia of chronicling nutrition. And for example, he plays it in terms of going back to the Bible, for example, and looking at what were they suggesting Samson ate, this type of thing. So looking at sports performance, going through all of the ages in terms of what we know in history, what were the strongmen eating this, and it tracks it all the way through there. It turned into it's fascinating read, and then subsequently went into, he did like a part 2 and a part 3 and went more from a bodybuilding. But the part 1 was just great, because it's that's what's happened through the ages with the nutrition, from sports nutrition. Other than that, from a training perspective, there's no one book really. I think I've just read so much and just trying so many different things. Again, I haven't been attached to one method, any one method. So it's hard to say that this book changed from a training perspective. Yeah.
Any other books? Different genres? Could be self-help or
self-help. So self-help's a bit interesting, because there's certain ones that I read and then think, that's good, but then they don't seem to. No self-help book maybe has had the profound effect on me, which has been, they only work when you're reading it. That's it. And then and some of them are enjoyable, some of them not so much. But I don't know.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
I still read them because I feel like you should always looking to progress. But there's no big one.
And then from a nutrition standpoint, any standouts if you were recommending for a coach, or just to get the fundamentals of the framework?
Yeah, so the fundamentals for a framework would be Precision Nutrition. They do a great job with that, and that's a great in. So I recommend to clients to do that as well. Other than that, depends what you want. It's tricky with nutrition because it's so individualized, and when we talk about nutrition, we go into talking about people. It's like a religion as well. So it's just people get very passionate about it, and that's why when I did my CSISN to be sports nutrition, I wouldn't recommend that, because it's like a full, almost like a university based module, but you have to kind of do something like that to be able to then have the framework to comment on certain things, because it's a real dodgy area. Precision nutrition, I think it's a good go-to. if you were to just follow that as a client, as a trainer, the information in that course will be able to not only help your clients but help your family. And if you just even apply that, you'll be most of the way there.
Yeah, awesome. Next one. I think I already know the answer to this, but favorite movie?
Oh, favorite movie,
and why?
I have to say Rocky IV, but then, and I get a bit of stick for that because people say, come on, it's not the best movie. I was like, well, it is for me, again, because of the training scene. So, although I know that's not going to win too many awards, one of my other favourite films, but definitely I'm going to say Rocky IV for sure, because it's just such an awesome film. And if anyone hasn't seen that, I think it's a classic. Yeah, it's a real classic.
The boxing scenes have dated a little bit, but the trainings are still semi-relevant.
But what other films are good? Seven's a great film, and Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
Full Metal Jacket as well. That's a great film as well. Yeah, so they're my pick.
Favorite cheat meal?
Cheat meal. So I'm fortunate that I don't crave certain foods. So, but what I do, I have a healthy appetite. So I can turn a healthy meal into a cheat meal. So, for example, if you go to the sushi and you go for the all-you-can-eat buffet, I politely tap out at 50 pieces because I feel rude to the restaurant. And then, so that's gone from a healthy meal into a cheat meal. But the classic cheat meal would be pizza for sure.
Yeah.
With my wife, pizza. It has to be, eating with my wife.
And do you have any quotes or catchphrases when you coach someone, or just you'd say on a daily basis?
No, I come across various quotes at certain times which feel like they really strike a chord. And an earlier quote, which definitely formed the basis of, which helped from a training perspective when you just really focus on training, was one of Lance Armstrong's quotes, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but it's something along the lines of pain is temporary. It might last a minute, and an hour, a week, or a year. When it stops, something else will replace it. But if you quit, it'll last forever. And I always remember that. And that is a little bit of a voice that's when you're on the bike doing 1,000 calories. Is that element of that that's in place. And that's when I guess that from a training perspective, I didn't realize I've used price is what you pay, value is what you get a lot with when explaining, just talking about the value of like what we do D5 and but there's nothing I follow on a day-to-day basis. No mantras.
And so final question, if you could turn back the clock and give yourself advice at the start of your career, say 15, 16 years ago, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
For me, it would be, don't wait until you think you know enough, because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And I think you're always putting that off. I'll never know. I need to know more from this. And that's where they're pushing the learning in. But actually, essentially, all that matters is action. Action trumps everything.
Yeah.
And if I could just recommend that is to just do it, and to just take action and do it.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. Now, final one is just where people can get in contact and find out more about D5 and what we do here. Yeah,
well, obviously they'll struggle to find me on Instagram.
Yeah, I don't think you're the biggest thing at that. You posted a photo in 2016, but no hashtags either. So
I think from that, no, for sure, we've got D5, so the D5 website, d5dubai.com, and that's going to be the main one. You can go through that. We have the Instagram is D5 Gymnasium. We've got a Facebook page, and like I say, on our website you can book in for even Skype consults with all of the guys to run over a whole host of topics. So yeah, plenty of options. Yeah.
And any actions or parting words for the listeners?
No, just get on with it and do it, and train. That's it. Train, be active, and enjoy. You've got to enjoy your training, and don't put it off.
Yeah. Awesome.
Let's get after it.
Well, thanks very much for agreeing to do the interview. It's been lots of fun.
Thank you.